Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to wait a minute or two, let a few more join. And in the meantime, we will put up a poll for you all to answer. And I also want to mention that the information that we will be talking about, and you can reference it on our website at railvolution.org/call for speakers. So all the downloads and information you need is on that website. So we'll just wait another minute or two, and then we will get started. Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome again. Welcome to the Rail Volution Call for Speakers webinar. My name is Andrea Ostergaard. I am the program manager at Rail Volution, and we're really excited that you're here. We hope this webinar provides some clarity into our process and also gets you thinking about your work, your project, and spark some new ideas and new voices that might be great for us to hear from. I am joined today by a member of our National Steering Committee. Her name is Kelly Betteridge. She's manager of capital planning, and she's from TriMet in Portland. So Kelly, if you'd like to say hello.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and afternoon for some. I'm excited to have this opportunity to share a little bit about how we put the conference together. This will be my 4th year serving on the National Steering Committee for Rail Volution and about 10 years of attending the conference. So I'm excited to get started.
Thanks. Before we go over what the webinar will cover, we are going to pop up another quick poll just to find out how many of you have ever proposed to the call for speakers. So you should see a poll pop up on your screen. And while you're answering this, I'll go over what we hope to cover today. We want to take about 15 to 20 minutes to talk about the call for speakers process and provide time for you to ask some questions at the end. What we want to cover is the process, of course, and then understanding what the steering committee members are looking for as they begin to curate the conference sessions, and then have the Q&A. So if at any time you have questions, feel free to type them into the questions box. All of the documents and instructions, again, are on our website, so railvolution.org/call for speakers, and that is also where you will submit the proposal. There's a link there. So we're this year, we're really excited to be going to Vancouver. It's really this year about the region and not just Vancouver downtown. Our mobile workshops, our events, everything we're planning is going to be showcasing a lot of the connecting suburbs, and a lot of those suburbs and the transit that connects them has a lot of similarities to the U.S. region of cities. So a lot of things that we'll be talking about will be really relevant, and then also have the interesting Canadian twists of policy and things like that. The Vancouver region, or Metro Vancouver, it really exemplifies the possibilities of coordinated planning and showcases a full range of all the modes. The automated SkyTrain system has been driverless since 1985. Light rail, rapid bus corridors, intercity rail, really incredible TOD projects, and implementing and designing bus systems and bike and ped projects. So they really have examples of everything. They also provide a fresh look at affordable housing tactics and policies for accommodating emerging modes. This year also is our 25th anniversary at Rail Volution, and it is the first time that we will be going international. So this is a theme. We're always looking for answers to these questions when we're putting together our sessions, when we're putting together a conference. So what does it mean to build a connected, equitable, livable community? What innovations and real-world solutions can you share when you're submitting your proposals? It being the 25th annual conference, it really presents us with an opportunity to revisit our assumptions and reaffirm a commitment to building livable communities with communities at the center. It's a time to address challenges such as affordability of transit-oriented communities, and take an in-depth look at innovations, new policies, new technologies in terms of how they advance transit and livability. The conference comes at a time of really rapid change in mobility options in the industry. the ways we work with our communities, and the ways we think about development and the integration of modes as we plan them. So I'm going to pass it over now to Kelly and allow her to give you the overview of the process.
Great, thanks, Andrea. So we are very fortunate at Rail Volution in that we do a really robust survey, and we've heard from a lot of folks that there's an interest in sort of lifting up the hood and understanding a bit more about how we get from the call for speakers to a successful conference. So we're going to dive into those details now. In January, the National Steering Committee met to debrief about the Pittsburgh conference. So at that meeting, we talk in depth about numbers, like attendance at sessions. We discuss feedback. We talk about some of the favorite sessions, some of the sessions that maybe didn't land the way we intended. We talk about our biggest successes. We talk about session format. And in general, we talk about takeaways, what we learned from that conference and what we want to carry forward to our next conference. With that information in mind, we break up into our track groups and we brainstorm the topics that we want to make sure to cover at the next conference. So that helps us to prepare our very specific call for speakers for the conference that's about to occur. When we leave that meeting in January, we are ready to release the call for speakers, which is what you all have had a chance to see. After the call for speakers closes, the National Steering Committee reconvenes in March-ish to sort the responses by track. Each track group agrees to about 12 to 15 sessions that we're going to move forward to the conference. And then each National Steering Committee member takes on 1 or 2 sessions to curate. So you can imagine that that experience varies from year to year, and that depending on our responses to the call for speakers, some topics will get lots of proposals, lots of folks who want to talk about something, and then some topics that we know we want to cover, we won't actually get any requests from speakers at all. So based on that information, we each move forward, and in March, we walk away with the intent to develop a specific panel, and sometimes we have 3 or 4 or 5 speakers that we're going to reach out to in order to curate the panel, and sometimes we reach out to our group of colleagues in the industry to try to find folks that can speak to the topics that we've decided to cover and maybe didn't receive papers on. So to understand that from a numbers perspective, you can see on the slide there that we get about 250 responses to the request for speakers, and we need to populate about 75 sessions. And so last year we had about a total of 130 proposals, or 40% of our total speakers and moderators came from our call for speakers. And this year we set a goal of increasing that number to get to about half of our speakers and moderators coming from this request for proposals. So with that in mind, the question I'm sure on everyone's mind is, how do you throw your hat into the ring? So how could you be successful in being a speaker at the upcoming conference in Vancouver? So this year there are 3 ways for you to respond to the call for speakers. First, you could submit an entire proposal, which means that you pick a topic and you populate 2 or 3 or 4 folks who would all speak to that topic. The intent is that you've reached out to those folks in advance and that that proposal is ready to go as a session. The second is you could propose as an individual speaker, and the intent is not that you would be the sole person speaking to a topic, but that we would then match you up with others who have similar interests or topic discussions, and that we would make a panel with you and others. And the third is an option that we did for the first time last year, and we're looking forward to doing again this year, but that's the Tech Tank Innovation Challenge. And the way to submit for that is a little bit different. It does require putting together a 2-minute video, but it's a great opportunity to showcase an innovation in our industry. So once we have all of those call for speakers received, it is then our job as National Steering Committee members and session coordinators to put together content. And what we're looking for is actually 2 different things. So content is incredibly important. We are looking for topics that are innovative and interesting and relevant to a large number of conference attendees. but we're also looking for a diverse panel. Excuse me. Within the topic areas, we're looking for speakers that represent a diversity of experience, geography, and lens. And we want to hear from new voices and new places. We work really hard to develop sessions that represent a diversity of thought and experience. And this is important to remember as each of you think about your network of colleagues. Maybe you know someone, or maybe you are someone that has a unique perspective or story to tell. And we all benefit from finding new voices and perspectives to grow the Rail Volution conference. This is also incredibly important for proposers of panels to keep in mind. If you propose a panel and it lacks diversity, it is not likely to make it as a session at the conference. So with those two big things in mind, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Andrea.
So thanks, Kelly. I apologize. So I'm going to review the timeline for the call. The call for speakers closes on February 28th at 11:59. So please don't wait until the last minute, 11:59 Central Time, I should say. We will not accommodate technical issues, and so please don't wait until that last minute. After that, our NSC members will review all the proposals at our meeting in March. That meeting is at the end of March, and they will leave that meeting with a good session framework of who they want to reach out to and begin sort of solidifying those sessions. After they begin reaching out to people, we will notify everyone in April of whether they will be moving on to continue through the process or if they will not be being asked to speak at the conference this year. Our final meeting is in June, and it's at the beginning of June, and this is where we'll make all of our decisions on the remaining proposals. You'll either be invited to speak on a specific session or, again, thanked for your time. After we have notified everyone, the National Steering Committee really works with their speakers, the session coordinators, the moderators, and share their presentation. They do dry runs. We lock everything down, the details, the titles, and everything for our APA credit applications, our printed program, things like that. And then the conference is in September. So we really have a pretty quick time where we coordinate 75 sessions and get the conference together and have about, in the end, we have about 400 speakers. So that's kind of the rundown of what you should expect for communication from us. We hope you learned some about our process and how we put together our conference. It's not a perfect process. Every year we're looking to do things a little better, a little different. We have a high value on both the content of our sessions and the diversity of speakers that speak to those topics. You can see it here. This is our value statement. One of our values is inclusivity, and that a successful conference really starts with a successful response to the call for speakers. So we really hope that you consider sharing the call and applying yourself. So thanks, and we'll move on to some Q&A here if we have any questions. Right now I'm not seeing any, so if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the box. Otherwise, you can always email me directly. My contact information is on the screen, AndreaO@railvolution.org, or you can call me and I can answer your questions about specific topics, or if there's anything about the process that you want more clarification on. Yeah, don't have any questions currently, so I might take one more minute. Kelly, we can go over the tracks if you wanted to. I see a comment here. to discuss the different tracks of our call for speakers and maybe how people could determine what track they should use if they submit a proposal. How do they figure that out? Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, in real time, I am pulling up the request for speakers. So just a second while I pull that up to go over the tracks. All right. So this year we have 6 tracks, right? So the first one is Innovations in Mobility to Enhance Livability. Track 2 is Transforming Communities Through Transit-Oriented Development. Track 3 is the Evolution of the Transit Agency. This is the track that I am part of. Track 4 is Community Needs Shaping Transit. Track 5 is Promoting Equitable Communities. And then track 6 are for folks that are interested in participating in the PK Slam, which is a wildly popular event that we have every year, which is folks presenting Pechakucha style about something in our industry. So that's always a crowd pleaser and a great way to get involved in a different way than a typical presentation. So I can sort of talk through the proposals, the types of proposals under each track. If that's helpful, I'll just spend a couple of minutes doing that. In track 1, which is Innovations in Mobility to Enhance Livability, it's market and community-driven mobility, mobility as a service, which is very hot right now, talking about autonomous vehicles, curbside management, examples from mid-sized cities of using these particular tools, Mobility Technology 101, and perspectives from users, where we're really looking to get folks that are advocates or community members to talk a little bit about how this might be impacting them either positively or negatively. For track 2, we have Transforming Communities Through Transit-Oriented Development. This is a real backbone to our conference, lots of information about transit-oriented development. We're looking for developers and lenders, as well as folks from the community and cities and transit agencies to talk about their experiences. Best practices in COD implementation is always a really important thing for us to cover. People really want to know where developers are at with this, the fundamentals of real estate, as that's a really important component of being successful, and then how to successfully mix uses, as many markets are really still grappling with how to make that happen successfully. I think we'll hear a lot about that from Vancouver, but important to hear from a lot of other places as well. Right-sizing parking, which is a hot topic for everyone. Parking is always a really important component to successful projects. Track 3 is the Evolution of the Transit Agency. We are looking for some examples of microtransit services within transit agencies, a riders union, innovative strategies within a transit agency. We had a specific request for innovative ways that transit agencies are communicating with their riders. So we're looking for some focus there, and understanding the evolution of the transit agency in terms of culture and places for folks to rise up within the transit agency, and what that looks like today and in the future. Track 4, which is Community Needs Shaping Transit. We're looking for BRT and bus networks. I will say that BRT has been a very important topic, and we get a lot of folks attending those sessions, so we're hoping to hear a lot about that at this conference. Corridor mode selection is always important, and understanding how that applies in various cities. There's interest in hearing more about high-speed rail. Let's see. State of good repair is maybe not the very sexiest topic, but it's something that affects all of us in the transit agencies. Track 5 is Promoting Equitable Communities. We're really looking for folks from community development and nonprofit groups. We want to hear more from advocates and folks that are maybe outside of the more traditional agency lens to speak to the topics within this particular grouping. And then track 6, like I said, is the PK Slam. So folks who are interested in maybe giving a non-traditional presentation about something that is of interest to them. It's a really high energy, cool way to get in front of a bunch of your peers and talk about your work.
Thanks, Kelly. I do have a couple questions here. I see them now. So one of the questions is, do you have a suggested format for proposals? I think this is asking about, a panel versus something else. So go ahead, Kelly, if you have a response, otherwise I can respond to that.
Sure, yeah. So I will say that every year we spend a fair amount of time talking about the actual format of our panels, and it is great to get some innovative ways to share information. I will also say that it's interesting because when we do our survey, the type of format that folks like the most is the traditional panel format. So we are very open to traditional panel format, but also always looking for opportunities to innovate. And so there were a few that were talk show last year. Sometimes there's debate, point and counterpoint. Those are all really great ways. So I think as long as you have a well thought out concept, the format could really be anything.
Great. Another question, can you please describe the process for being involved in the Pachacucha style presentation? And I can take this one. The Pachacucha or Pachacucha style format is you do the same process. You put together sort of your idea of what you want to maybe present on, and then when you're going through the proposal process, you select that track 6 to submit into that group. We have a group, the new Rail Volutionaries, who will spend time vetting those proposals and really trying to find a good balance of people and topics and presentation styles and things like that to put together that program. But it should be on the same timeline as the other presentation or proposal process as well. So another question, can someone submit more than one proposal? You definitely can. You can submit as many as you want. They'll all be treated individually, but ultimately, I guess, Kelly, do you have some advice on that about how, once you're kind of treated as a speaker, from your perspective in planning those sessions, what does it look like when someone submits more than one proposal?
Sure. I think it's a great idea if you have expertise in multiple different track areas, which would make sense. As I mentioned earlier, there are specific areas or topics that we're hoping to cover, and sometimes we don't get any submittals. So it's possible if you did one or two that you might hit one of those areas within a given track, and maybe your other one is in a place that has a whole bunch of submittals. So I think that makes sense. In general, we try not to have someone speak at more than one session. It does happen, but in general, we try to have as many speakers as we can. And so while you might submit for 2, you maybe would only get selected for 1. But I do think that if you have expertise and great ideas, that it makes sense to go ahead and submit more than one proposal.
Great, yeah. Another question here. Are there race ethnicity questions to answer in the application, or should we submit bios that include this information? We do ask race ethnicity questions in the application and bio information. So you'll want to include that stuff for yourself as a proposer and for other speakers. Are there types of session structure you prefer? Presentation, workshop, panel discussions? Oh, okay, we've kind of addressed that one. One of the things I will say to build on what Kelly said earlier is that we are always looking for sessions that engage the attendees. So if you can work in a way to get more attendee engagement, that I think will go well. How do we indicate whether our session attendees are diverse? There's questions in the application, and then once the session coordinator reaches out to you, they'll work with you on your panelists and have more questions and discuss the overall proposal with you. Let's see. Is Rail Volution looking for best practice guidance and case studies from around the world? Kelly, you want to answer that one?
Sure. Yeah, I think in particular around some of those really innovative topics, there are places in the world that are doing many things that we aren't yet doing in this country. And so I do think that there is some interest. In general, we're always looking for something that's innovative, but also something that appeals to a large group of attendees. So I guess that's sort of the balance. So the answer, I think, at a high level is yes, those are great things to submit, but maybe also thinking about how that might balance off of something that's happening here within the United States as well. So sort of, it's a great case study, and here's why it's applicable to folks that are working within the industry.
Great. Someone types, to be clear, all transit is the scope, not just rail.
Yes, that is a really important question.
Could you please elaborate on the Tech Tank Innovation Challenge? Do you want me to do that, Kelly?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Take that if you want. Sure. So our Tech Tank came out last year as a way to try and get some new ways of presenting information, really to kind of try and attract people doing innovative business, having innovative software or projects or things that really just don't fit in sort of the standard workshop format. So it's really anything. It can be anything from, I think last year we had some software, we had some really hypothetical ideas around, you know, a potential future way of, what was one of them? Like planning cityscapes and planning curb usage, and so really some interesting different presentations. It's in the sort of Shark Tank format. So it's sort of pitching your idea. We have some judges, and so we'll have a probably pick the top 5 or 6 that we get, allow them to present at the conference, and then the top 2 from that group will go on to present their idea or pitch their idea to everyone at the final plenary. So if you're interested in participating in that, you would want to put together sort of a 2-minute video where you're pitching your idea and kind of what you would do, and then if you're selected, we'll have someone reach out to you and they will work with you to put together, you know, give you more guidance on creating the larger, longer pitch.
Andrea,
yeah.
Just to add, so just a moment ago, there was a question about whether the conference covered all modes and not just rail. And I think you and I were sort of flipped in our answer. And so to be really clear, the conference covers all modes. And I know that can be confusing because of the name of the conference, but it is absolutely multimodal. And I will say that in particular in the last few years, there's been so much interest in corridor and base bus and BRT. And then there's always, of course, a big focus on bike and walk and TDM, and you know, it's all inclusive in terms of mobility. And so absolutely, it's not just about rail, and we welcome proposals from all modes and things that are cross modes.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Yeah. Another question, can you talk more about 5 tracks for this year? What may or may not fit in them? For example, I'm not sure where TDM would go.
Yeah,
I mean, the tracks are huge. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. So I guess my advice is that if you have a panel idea, put together, or a topic, put it together, and then select the track that you think it fits the best under. But if there are 2 or 3 that you think it could fit under, you can just list that. The reason I say that is that the Venn diagram of the tracks all have overlap, and it sort of depends on the interest of the steering committee members within the or the session leaders between the tracks in terms of who or which track will cover something specific. So you're absolutely right that TDM fits under at least 2 and maybe 3 tracks, and that's okay. You could submit that, and then we would sort of work that out in our meeting in March. Like, oh, great, here's this great proposal. This person wants to talk about X. Do you want that? Do we want that? Where should that fit? So submit it, take your best guess at track, and then we can sort that out in real time when we meet as a group.
Yeah, great. Let's see, where are we here? For regular sessions, how much time is given to each presentation? What is the regular session time overall?
Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
So sessions are typically either 90 minutes or 60 minutes. We experimented with some additional 60-minute panel discussions last time, and I have to say that we got really great feedback on that. So anyways, the answer is either 90 minutes or 60 minutes. And so in general, when I have a panel, I try to say usually around 12 minutes per person, but definitely no more than 15, because I want to leave a lot of room for conversation. And the intent is for folks to have sort of 3 main takeaways that they're really focused on in their presentation, and then a lot of time for folks in the audience to, like I said, sort of dive into the presentation and the intersectionality between the various speakers.
Another question, can you please remind us of the % of panels created by Rail Volution versus panels respondents proposed? I think on the earlier slide, we had said that we used 130 proposals last year. We don't have, we try to use, of our speakers, we're trying to use 50% people who proposed. So I guess that could be a little misconstrued. I don't know how many, Kelly, I would say most of our sessions kind of come with at least a base, from a base of a proposal, and then whether they get added with other speakers or other proposals, you know, put together, and then they put a different angle on it. I don't think that we have a stat that says how many of our sessions come from straight proposals, if that answers that. Kelly, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's really quite organic. So it might be that someone puts in a topic and we end up covering that topic, but not necessarily with the speaker that was submitted. So I don't think we have specific information about that, but there is the slide that we shared where about 50% of the speakers, 40% last year of the speakers came from the call for speaker, and this year we're hoping to get at least 50%.
Let's see, I got a release. Can you review some personas of the attendees? Do you want to take that one, Kelly?
Sure. So attendees include lots of folks from the industry. So we have folks from transit agencies. We have folks from consulting firms that work with transit agencies. We have folks that work in TOD. We have community members. We have activists around mobility and transportation. We have, you know, DOTs. I would say sort of anyone who works in the mobility and housing space are folks that attend the conference. And so, you know, one of the first slides that Andrea put up sort of has those bigger questions about what it is that Rail Volution is, but I think that that is probably a good guidance. Let's see, I think it was what does it mean to build connected, equitable, livable communities what innovations and real solutions can you share? So those are folks that work in that space are the folks that are attending Rail Volution.
Mm-hmm. Pedestrian safety is a big topic in Canada with many new LRT lines coming on stream. Would that be a fit? I just want to point out that if you have really specific topic questions, you can email those and we can give you some more specific guidance on those. But Kelly, would you like to address that?
Yes, absolutely. So as you all know, everyone who rides transit starts as a pedestrian, and so absolutely an incredibly important topic and something that is on the minds of all of us within the transit industry as well as housing and livability. So that's absolutely an important topic to be covered.
Where does public engagement belong?
Good question. I think that's another place where it could fit in multiple tracks. So, for instance, my track is about the evolution of the transit agency. So one could make, depending on what it is that you want to talk about, that could certainly fit within that. There's also a community piece. And so I think, once again, it depends on your specific topic. Take your best guess at what track it fits in. And then we ultimately sort those things and make sure that they end up in the right place.
Yep. Can we pitch mobile or tour-based presentations? I can respond to that if you want. We've never had that, We have mobile workshops that are organized annually from our local host committee. We have our National Steering Committee who puts together a lot of the content, but we also have a local host committee of people in the conference region that actually coordinates and puts together all of our mobile workshops. And so at this time, if you were going to propose a tour, I don't think that would be. It would depend on what it was. We've never had one, like I said, so I think we always consider everything. But our mobiles are really specifically organized by the local community. So I think that might answer that question. I don't want to say no, but it's not likely and it's not normal that we've received those. Can you please explain again the time for the regular individual session? 60 to 90 minutes was for a panel, because you mentioned 12 minutes per person. So maybe we just want to explain a little bit more about the how a sort of standard workshop is divided up or organized.
Sure. Do you want me to take that?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So there are 3 ways to submit, and the first one is a panel. And if you submit it as a panel, the intent was that you would have, 3 or 4 speakers, 2, 3, or 4 speakers who would speak at a 60 or 90-minute session. If you are submitting as an individual, the intent is that we would then group you with others, 2, 3, or 4 people, to create a panel that is either 60 or 90 minutes. So if it was 60 and you were doing an individual, you would assume something like 10 minutes, 12 minutes. If you're on a 90-minute panel, the most would be 15. But the intent is that we group individuals together to create a panel. Every once in a while, there is a topic that the entire session is dedicated to a single topic, but that is not typical. And so in general, I would say that you would assume that your content is something that you would cover as an individual in around the 12-minute range.
Yeah, and that's specifically for those sort of standard panel. We have other formats also, and obviously that would vary. So I think that is all of the questions that we've received. If there is any other questions or people want to reach out, you can go ahead and email me, andreao@railvolution.org. I want to thank you all for attending. Kelly, thank you very much for participating, and we look forward to reading your proposal.